Well, hi everyone. Happy Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. Um, I'm Tammy Lindberg, the Lower Adolescent Program Director. Zoom webinars are always kind of odd because I literally am talking into the void, but I see a couple of you out there. So thanks for joining. Um, I will sort of go through a PowerPoint and kind of tell you a bunch of information that you need to know about ninth grade next year for many of your students. Maybe some of you are here just for information for the coming years, but this talk is primarily directed for ninth years next year. So we'll go ahead and get started. And then at the end of that slide deck, we'll sort of answer some questions, Q&A to the best of my ability. And if need be, I can send you answers to questions as well as a follow-up. So I'm Tammy, and I've been the program director for maybe 5 years at Great River, but have been here since 2008. So I'm definitely feeling like I'm an oldie, but maybe still a goodie at Great River. Let me see if I can get this slide deck to share. It was not really loading before, so we'll just kind of go with this low tech version. When I tried to do the present, it wasn't really working. So this is your orientation to the ninth grade specific, or the ninth year part of lower adolescent, and it's not summer 2021 anymore. Thank God. So quick land acknowledgement, but also as I'm learning more about this practice, a land back acknowledgement. So our site is located on Dakota land, and it has a really rich, deep and rich history. Bdote Memory Map has some really good, easily accessible information if you're looking for more. Line 3 was a big topic really recently. It's kind of dying down, but it's still present in my world. And of course, missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit individuals remain present, and our survivors of residential schools are topics that we could continue to learn more about as white people or non-Indigenous people. And part of that land back is donating or giving parts of our own, of what we can, back to people of that community. So here's one organization that I'm a part of. So if that's helpful to you, feel free. Great River does reside on Dakota land and is an urban Montessori learning environment. Our mission prepares students for their unique roles as responsible and engaged citizens of the world. It's particularly meaningful this year. A lot of what I do and decisions that I make or conversations that I have, I often think, how does this relate to our mission and vision? Or conversations that I have with students, is what we're doing right now in line with our mission and vision. So it is becoming more and more this year a guide to what we do. And lower adolescent is grades 7 through 9. So we have mixed aged communities at Great River School, and that provides a beautiful arc of growth and development, maturity, and leadership, contribution, all sorts of benefits there, and a really deep knowledge of your guides as a student and of the students as guides and their families and their caregivers. So it's really beautiful. After maybe 12 years here, I don't know if I could go back to another way. So we're a team of about 30 faculty members with our advisors and our specialists, our special ed folks, our supportive interventionists, or we number up to about 30, and about 200 students, a little less. So we have this intense focus on the humanity of our student, this beautiful time that isn't often emphasized as beauty, but this growth and development where you can literally watch them grow in height, but also in who they are and who they want to become. It is a transition time. It's incredible from this child to the adolescent. By the time they leave us from 7th grade all the way up until 9th grade and go into 10th grade, they're quite different people. So it's pretty incredible. A little bit about Montessori pedagogy. So we're in this third plane, and Montessori talks about this third plane, the 12 to 18-year-olds, as this time for self-construction. So they are really building up who they are and trying on different roles and really trying to become who they want to be in the world and understand all these different people that they could become. It is a very sensitive period or intense need. The child or the adolescent at this point has an intense need for belonging. So social belonging, friends, and figuring out where they are in their family structure, with their teachers, with, maybe they're getting their first jobs during this time. How do they belong and what communities do they fit into? Intense focus on themselves. Some might call that egocentric. We might call it just an inward glance at who am I? That comes with a lot of self-criticisms or, the word is gone, but really focusing on themselves and deciding if that's who they like and sort of figuring out if that's who they want to be. Independence, so their need to be independence is really strong, and that comes with benefits and drawbacks. A concern for society. So we're starting to see students really start to take care about different countries. Maybe, right now we're seeing a lot of concern about the war in Ukraine. We're seeing a lot of concern about global warming, extinction of species, things like that. So they're starting to look bigger picture and be able to do something about it. And also a need for structure. Where are the boundaries and how hard do I push on those boundaries? So that takes a more emphasized approach in the middle school, the junior high program. So it's a construction of the social self, an intense creation of themselves and their self-construction. So it is also, if this were in color, it would be colored red. Montessori would color these red. If it's in black and white, you see them in black because it's a fiery period. It's a lot of emotions. It's a lot. It's big feelings. It's not really understanding where they are and really needing people who've gone through it to help them figure out that same thing. And 0 to 6 is also a fiery period. So Montessori also often says that the first plane and the third plane are similar to each other. So a little bit of pedagogy. And as we get going, this GRS lexicon, so some different terms. We've got advisory every morning. Usually for this year, it's 40 minutes. We'll see what it is next year, 30 or 40 minutes, depending on the schedule and the times. It serves as a home base, a landing for students. It is one of the most important parts of the day. They're connecting, they're checking in, they're getting their executive functioning skills boosted and maybe refined a little. And it's also a time for independent work and to check in with your peers, so that social time. CAS is a abbreviation that stands for Creativity, Action, and Service. This is in the lower adolescent, done on Wednesday afternoons, where it is sometimes guide-led, it's sometimes student-led, a time for students to explore themselves through creative means like arts and crafts, embroidery, board games, things like that. Action through, right now we've got outdoor fitness, but ultimate frisbee and soccer and football are always things that people engage in during that action afternoons. And service is where you give back to the community. Could be in the kitchen, could be chopping firewood, things like that, for our school farm. So that CAS block usually takes place on Wednesday afternoons from 1 to 3. Students sign up, sometimes students are placed, and they sort of go through that for 2 to 4 weeks at a time on a rotating basis. We'll talk about key experiences, and we have 3 key experiences in our 9th grade year. It's the fall trip is the Buttermilk Falls Farm. So it's a 4 or 5 day trip out to the farm where you're immersed in living on the farm, working on the farm, and being with your peers and your guides for the, really, it's very early on in the year, like the 4th day of school. It's a great way to get to know your community and dive into big work. The winter retreat is usually a 2-day retreat after semester 1. It's a celebration of all the hard work that students have done during their academics in semester 1. You can guess that academics take a little bit more precedence as a 9th grader. So we're getting a little bit more serious, and we need to celebrate all that work. So we'll talk more about that. And our bike trip this year is what our students are taking. It could also be spring intensive, and we haven't made a decision about what that looks like for next year yet. Really just waiting to see how it all goes this year and what the developmental need is next year, but we'll talk about that more. Independent work is a daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-weekly opportunity for students to understand how to plan their own work time and accomplish some things during work. Sometimes it's more heavily guided, which looks like we're going to work on this biology assignment right now. You've got some time to work on the stop motion video in class. You've got an extended period on Wednesday, about 3 hours, 2 hours to choose what you want to do. So what does your work plan look like that day? And the advisor is checking in on that. And SAS is sex and sexuality. It is a required component for graduation. It's also kind of necessary for developing students. So we offer that for students twice a week for a quarter. And that currently is offered for 9th and 10th graders. And students take both, and it's serving our needs pretty well at the moment. So there's some background information. And as we dive into the key experiences, the fall trip is focused out at the farm. We've got some pictures of students chopping down wood, washing greens for the CSA. So they live and work out at the farm. It's camping primarily, eating out in the elements. You're pretty much outside for a solid 4 to 5 days. If you're at the board meeting next week, you'll see that we're hoping to extend the 9th grade trip to 5 days. The students participate in a microeconomic venture. So it could be weaving or maple syrup making, could be knitting, could be all these things where we're creating crafts with our hand. So we're melding the hand and the head. And then we're selling them at the fall harvest. So students both have a lot of like experience on the farm. They're harvesting vegetables or chopping down wood, but they're also focused in on one thing too. The benefit of this trip in the fall, so early in the fall, and we're really feeling it this year because we weren't able to take them because of COVID, is that we as adults get to know our students very well. And we are this year just getting to know those students to that same level currently in March. So the trip has a lot of academic benefits because then the student also knows their guides that well. The celebration in the middle of the year, that winter retreat, some years the weather is so cold that we go bowling. Other years, like this year, it was beautiful. So we went to Franconia Sculpture Garden and hiked around at Interstate State Park. And the second day, we were outside all day, walking and exploring downtown St. Paul and experiencing some freedom there and responsibility out in the city, sort of eating lunch on our own, and then ice skating in the afternoon. So it's really full. It's a time for our community to just relax, regroup, and remember that we're a community together. This year, we're taking the bike trip in the spring, and that's a 100-mile trip. And I leave it on here because I'm not sure what we'll do in the spring of next year. So it's biking. We teach students how to bike. We're currently gearing right up for that, for this current bike trip this year. But it could also be spring intensives. And those could be more based at the school. Things like Garage Band is a really great example where they practice music for a week to 7 days, and then they present it at the end. You know, they form a band. That's all they do for 7 days. And it could be cooking. Patricia did a cooking spring intensive 2 years ago where they deep dived into Latin American culture and cooking there. So who knows what will come of next year, but something to look forward to. And these are this year not mandatory, but typically they are mandatory trips, and they are camping based, outside based. So be ready for that. And that if you're considering Great River as a school, that is a factor in your decision. It is what we do and a main touch point throughout all 4 years of Great River High School, and of course in junior high too. So our daily routine is really similar to the schedule the 7th and 8th graders have this year. It is a sort of advisory, a work period. So these 2 blocks of classes in the morning, lunch, recess, and then another block of class with care of the environment in the afternoon. The one schedule that I'm playing with right now, and it's totally dependent on the whole school, has lunch and recess after A. So it bumps it up a little bit, sort of moves things down. Recess would go first and then lunch. So sort of balancing those places out and getting students what they need for the whole school. Our 10th through 12th graders are eating lunch right now at 1 o'clock. So we would definitely want to change that for next year. But what we are looking for at our school, you can expect small classroom sizes of about 25 people. And that's kind of the largest they get. So you can expect some smaller classes, especially in those elective classes that you might take. And what we know is that work is the normalizing force in the classroom, and it connects the individual to the community. So we're doing a lot of group work, we're doing collaborative work. Rarely is work individual and on your own, but it does exist. And sometimes you'll see that more present than others, given the scope of the sequence. The 9th graders right now are creating individual stop motion videos depicting mitosis and meiosis in biology. And at the same time, they're creating action project videos in Libby's class, our literature class. So it is a good balance of both, to really try and help the student recognize at how social they are and how much they do need to talk. So we give them purposeful moments to talk and to be engaged with each other in meaningful ways. We have community meetings once a week. Right now they're at 11 o'clock on Wednesdays. This is the driving force of restorative justice at our community. So tomorrow we'll be talking about issues such as subbing and making sure that all members of our community feel welcome in our community. So we also are talking about upcoming bike trip and what students can expect there. So it's gratitude, compliments and thanks, and what's going well, and then also what can we improve on. So students can expect to have community responsibilities every day. We have this care of the environment portion in the afternoon, and students are restoring our environment, preparing it for the next day. That could look like washing windows, cleaning tables, taking out trash, feeding the goats. All those things are good practical work. Group work and a really strong emphasis on interdependence, that we all need each other to be able to get through this. So that really remains constant from the 7-8 program, or the 7-8 years. We have made a decision to keep recess for our 9th graders next year. We are seeing the majority of our 9th graders needing and really love this opportunity to get outside every day. This year it's serving as a mask break, and we'll see what next year brings. But recess outside is serving a huge portion of a purpose for these students. But there's also, I know some students are not wanting to go outside. So there's indoor options for students that don't need that movement or that chatting too. So there's some examples on this slide. Let's see, what haven't we covered? Here are some examples of elective offerings. I'll send this slide deck out to you so you can peruse through the course catalog now if that's of interest to you. And then our graduation requirements. It's important to talk about this before students start so that students and their caregivers understand what's expected of them in their 4 years at Great River. So there's a column of recommended credits. That's what we recommend. That is the path that keeps the most options open for you if you are going on to post-secondary college or technical schools. That keeps the most options open for you. But required in the state of Minnesota to graduate and at Great River School, you need to have 8 credits of English. And so usually a credit, not usually, a credit is a semester-long course. So it is important to remember and keep in the back of student and families' minds that 8 is all 4 years of your high school career. So if things go wrong in English or social studies in the first year and you happen to fail a class, you need to retake that. There are options to retake it at Great River, not the same class, but a different one. There's other credits and stuff like that. And there's also a summer school, but really making sure that upfront, really clearly, it's helpful. I found that families understand there's 8 and 8 of social studies, 8 credits for both. Math is just 3 full years or 6 credits. Same with science, but the caveat is that biology is a requirement for graduation in Minnesota. And you also then need to pass chemistry or physics. So you have to take biology and pass it, and you have to take chemistry or physics and pass it. So students have that option to choose between chemistry or physics in the state of Minnesota and at Great River too. We also require 2 fine arts credits. So that could be music, theater, or art, drawing, painting, ceramics. 4 credits of a world language. So 2 years in our language we offer at Great River is Spanish. There's other options to go to Concordia Language Village or take it online, things like that, if you want to take Arabic or French, or there's a student right now doing Hebrew. And then 11 elective credits. So for a total of 45 or 53, and then, count out from there. So that's that. One thing, this is also written in our handbook if you wanted to refer to it there too. And the 9th grade course offerings, we offer geometry or algebra, depending on sort of where you're at. We'll talk about math pathways in a moment. Biology, civics and government. So civics is a semester, and economics is another semester. Spanish 1 and 1 additional elective credit. So again, there's that link to our course catalog, and students typically sign up for those in April or May. So that's exciting. And our math pathways. So at Great River, I have to link the math pathways doc. When I send that out, I will link it for you there. We have chosen to detrack. So we started this work, I think in 2019, about detracking our math programs, because we found that if a student went into algebra or intro to algebra in 7th grade, they were sort of stuck on that path for the rest of their high school career. And really, to get out of that track, had to take extra summer classes or double up on their math curriculum in the school year. So what we've done is gone to our integrated pathway. So lots of schools around the city, the state, the country are doing a more integrated, and it lines up with Montessori pedagogy much better because it's a spiraling curriculum. So students will come to algebra topics and geometry topics, and maybe a little bit of statistic work, and then back all the way through their high school career. The 7th and 8th grade, we have a really strong focus on student-centered math. And we are in our 2nd, but really our 1st year in non-distance learning time of integrating Montessori integrated math, the MIM curriculum, and making that better and better, and seeing how the role of mini lessons, guide observation, and guide feedback plays in there. And as the student progressive, in the 9th year, they have this Math 9 curriculum. So it is our integrated math. And as they go through up the pathway, their endpoints are IB Math, Analysis and Approaches, which is our standard level IB class, and then Analysis and Approaches, which is our higher level IB class, or Applications and Interpretation, which is our standard level. So there's a couple different entrance points through there. And we've got math intervention as needed in the 7th through 9th grade, as well as the 10th through 11th. So math also shows up in Current Cafe, in the culinary arts class that I'm teaching right now. It's full of math, and robotics, and our bike shop, creative expression. So math is really interwoven in those in a big way. So we've got behavioral finance right now, personal finance. So really looking at stock markets, how to keep a checkbook, how to do your taxes. Those are some additional elective offerings. So we're really looking at student-centered flipped classrooms is where we're going, though our 7th and 8th grade our students are not ready right now for a flipped classroom. And we're trying to get them there. Pacing is something we're figuring out as we go along. The pandemic is really helping us and helping us understand where students are better. And one of the things we do is the NWEA assessment. Both it's a standard norm referenced exam at the beginning of the year, middle of the year for our 9 through 12, and at the end of the year for all 7 through 12th grades. And just making sure that students are progressing. Where do we need to focus our teaching, give our lessons more for the next year? And the elementary program also does the NWEA, so we use that data too. And self-advocacy and collaborative work continue to be touch points of our program. And we use standards-based grading at Great River School. So if you click on this grading practices, there's, I think maybe I tried to keep it to a 1-pager, but it turned into a 1.5-pager summary of what we do. But we're grading for equity. So standards-based grading allows us to grade what the student knows and not grade on if they've been attending class or how well they can turn in assignments. So what that looks like is we're focusing on a week's worth of learning, not discrete missing assignments. So your student doesn't get penalized for missing their work. And typically we don't have zeros for missing work. This year we needed to adjust our practices and put in zeros for missing work because the students in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade are having a struggle turning their work in. So we are definitely responding and being flexible and helping students gain those skills. It's a focus on feedback and learning. So we're trying to give rich, formative feedback. So we really need students to turn in their formative work, which is worth 1% of their grade, to be able to demonstrate proficiency and mastery on those summative assignments. So we're grading heavily on those summatives, enabling students to make mistake after mistake and correct their mistakes, correct their misinformation, and grow in their skills on those formatives. So this year, students are struggling sometimes in the 9th grade to turn in that formative work because, quote, it's not worth anything. But we also have some policies in place that you can't retake the biology exam that they took last Monday if you don't have most of your formative work in. Or in one of the class that I teach, you can't pass the class unless you have 3 out of the 6 of this particular formative. So we're still requiring them. We're just not hindering the grade on how well students do on them because we're focused on this growth mindset that students can grow and change throughout their academic career. So you'll see in our lower adolescent grading scale that's linked in this grading practices, descriptors of our grade, written out sentences of what this grade could look like. And that rings true in our rubrics as well. So for projects or papers, lab reports, students will get rubrics sort of defining what the expectations are for each particular assignment. And then we give students in Schoology number grades 1 through 7, with 1 through 3 sort of being an area of concern and 7 being exceptional, exceeding mastery. If your student is around a 5, that's equivalent to an A-, a 6 is an A, 4 is a B. So this is, if you're here for Great River now in 7th and 8th grade, it's the same scale, it's the same grading scale. So you can expect that same grading practice to ring through. And grades are determined, we can synthesize sufficient evidence from sort of 3 things: products, the things that students are creating or turning in their work, but also observations, sort of like it could be they bombed the recent biology test, but they have demonstrated over and over and over and over again that they know how to do the chi-squared in this lab report. And then conversations. I've had a conversation. I know the student knows how to do it. But even though they're scoring a 1 on the test, I can sort of go back and have a conversation and really pull out the brilliance and the knowledge of the student rather than just sort of one and done it with the test. So it's that triangular or triangulation and the identification of a pattern that we're looking for. And we're looking for the most consistent level of performance and the emphasis on the most recent evidence of learning. So yes, in the beginning of the unit, the student may not have done very well on their lab report, but as they gain skills on how to write the procedures and the data and the statistical analysis and the conclusion, over time through that unit, we want to focus on what did they learn throughout their learning process and not factor in maybe how the mistakes they were learning from at the beginning. So we often call feedback feed forward because it springs the student forward in their learning. And there are things that you as family might understand and recognize with your own student that aren't in a grade. How does the student build healthy relationships? Can they keep a planner? Can they chunk their workout and plan backwards from a big assignment? So those are the skills that the advisor gives feedback on in the form of comments in the progress report at the end of the semester, and likely reflects on at conferences too, which are twice a year and student-led. And then the guide in each particular area or class gives feedback on curiosity and interest in learning, asking for help, work completion, and collaboration. So we do give feedback on these things. It just doesn't affect the grade we give them in the transcript in PowerSchool or the unit grades in Schoology. And when you're looking at this grading practices, 1.5 pager, you'll find that we use Schoology and PowerSchool as learning management platforms. So Schoology is really, really good at helping us post assignments and communicate with students, and students can turn in their work there. PowerSchool doesn't do that, but PowerSchool is a really secure way to save and store student information. So we are currently working through the interface between those two learning management platforms. And we're in year 2 of Schoology implementation, and we continue to get better and better at it. This is the grading scale for the lower adolescent. And I know it's pretty small here, but it is linked, and it is a 1-pager at that link. So if you want to see sort of the what we're looking for in our different grading scales, you can click there. So our keys to success, I have like 3 more slides. Our keys to success is to remember that 9th grade is a big, huge transition. Sometimes students that had it nailed down in 8th grade struggle really hard in 9th grade because the workload increases. There's another increase in workload, increase in expectations, and just in executive functioning. If students are struggling now in their 8th grade year at taking notes, that is something to be emphasizing at home and be requiring in partnership with your guides at school. And really checking in on Schoology and PowerSchool. So what I like to recommend is that the families have their students walk them through Schoology and check in on their grades weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, like what makes sense for your child, your student, excuse me, and your family. It tends to work less well when the caregiver is sort of checking up on their student and not being really transparent, because the student has such a high need for independence and responsibility. So let them take that and own that piece, but they do need support. So don't let them go entirely. So your student will have their advisor, and their advisor is their core touch point. They have them throughout the whole year. It will be different advisors from the 7th and 8th because it's such a hard transition. So all of these guides are 9th grade guides, know the system, and communicate thoroughly with other 9th grade guides. And then the core guides. So Patricia is the core guide for Spanish. Sarah Hansen, for example, is for geometry. So reaching out to either of those, and even me, if you're needing support or questions, things like that. Students really do need to be keeping a planner, and if your student is going to struggle at this, usually because they've struggled with it in 7th and 8th grade. So they're either getting it together in 8th grade and understanding how to keep track of their work, or they're not. And the workload does increase in 9th grade. And if they're not keeping track of their work, a lot of them say Schoology calendar does it for me, and it's not quite foolproof. So the planner is a very useful tool. Really developing healthy work habits and routines. So helping your student understand that there is a time and a place each night or every 2 nights that they're sitting down and doing work at home. Usually there's follow-up to work to do every night. You can sometimes batch it if you've got baseball practice or something like that. And making sure that they're also using their independent work time at school. So if they're coming home slammed every night or behind in their classes, it's a good indicator that they're not quite following through on their end of the bargain at school, and that your guides are trying hard to keep them accountable. Practical life. So at home, that's things like sweeping, feeding the dog, cleaning up their room. Having responsibilities at home helps develop those executive functioning skills and helps them understand their place in society, that you are interdependent. And the trick about it is that I have my own children, and it's hard to not just do it for them because I empathize with them and they're tired, or it's just faster for me to do it. It's really hard not to do that for them. But it's really helpful when the dog is starving at 6 o'clock. It's a nice reminder for the student that they forgot, and to build those executive functioning skills. So practical life also looks like making dinner and contributing in real meaningful ways for your family. Maybe it's watching a littler sibling, or helping an elderly family member or the elderly neighbor, things like that. So understanding their place in society takes a big role there and cements those things. It's also really important to remember love, understanding, and communication. So sometimes the 9th grader messes up, and that is just fine. And what we need to do is catch them and help put them back together. Sometimes it's true, students do need to forge their own way and make big mistakes, and we need to help put them back together. And maybe live with some hard consequences. And those that we talked about, those boundaries before. And so having those boundaries is part of love and understanding, and being very clear and transparent in your communication. It's huge for the 9th grader that is really seeking the boundaries of which to push against to help direct them and steer them in the moral development, as Montessori talks about. So I also send out monthly updates. I try super, super hard to send one a month and not flood your inbox. So pay attention to those and read those. It usually helps you stay included. And there's so much information that comes from schools and organizations that we're involved in, that those are direct conduits from me to you. So keeping those, they come from my inbox, you'll see it from me. And then these info nights, I try to do one once a month. And sometimes it's on grading practices because we forgot, let's be honest, in October, we don't remember what I just talked about grading practices. And we need a little bit more information about it. So it's things like that. And back to school night, or we've got an info night tonight, and we've also got one tomorrow about bike trip. So if your student's going on the bike trip, maybe I'll see you again. So keeping an eye out for that. I know it's really early for summer recommendations, but here we are. Something to think about. We are a super active school, so biking on whatever machine that looks like, or taking hikes on whatever ability level that looks like. What we're really trying to get to is the ability to walk or traverse 2 to 3 miles in whatever accommodations you need to make that happen. Same with biking. Is that an e-bike so that you can participate and go 20 miles in a day on the bike trip? Or is that just a recumbent bike, a tricycle, a two-wheel bike? What does it look like? Figuring that stuff out. But first and foremost, enjoying your summer. So it is really important that students take a break. It's really important that our guides and our faculty at Great River take a break too. And we want to make sure that our whole community does that. It's another intense year. So I'm not asking you to catch up or get some more math work in, unless that's what you and your student determine to be necessary. We really have a strong culture in reading at the school. It builds so much knowledge and connection. So we're asking for 4 to 5 novels of your choice. We will send home a book list that is all sorts of different ability levels and walks of life and authors from all sorts of different perspectives. So 4 to 5 novels, read. Participate in a service learning project with your family. So figuring out where you fit in, and the family is correcting any behaviors out in the world and developing that moral character, and holding to our norms at Great River. Surprise, if you're in Great River, you're part of our community, and we value you and hope you value our same mission and vision. So those overnight camping trips can be really helpful to students who have never camped before. It helps make that fall farm trip a little less intimidating. So everything goes to plan with COVID. I mean, I said this last spring too, but we're going camping at the farm for 4 nights. And that can be a really intense, steep learning curve for some students. So whatever you can do to help make that better is great. So ideally, the students are planning and using information. I would really like to see students plan their own trip. And of course, adults can go with, but using those executive functioning skills for an actual trip that they're taking, and then feeling the feedback or the feed forward if you forgot the cups, and how to figure out a plan for going forward. If you want, you could use Khan Academy for math practice. You don't need to, but keeping that planner and calendar for your family is a really important tool that adults can do for their student to model executive functioning and model that planning process. If students can plan, prepare, and clean up a meal for their family once a week, though it contributes to your family, and also contributes to the growth and development of the adolescent, making sure that they can pack their overnight bag if they go to camp or Widgie or grandma's house or grandpa's house, whatever, and riding the city bus. So we do ride the city bus, and that can also be intimidating. So those are some of the practical skills that you can do to prepare for your fall. We've got a key experiences packing list for the fall trip. If you want to take a look at it now, I'm sure it's going to be super thrilling. And our school supplies list. So we'll send all these out in August as well. But if you want them now, they're there. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm grateful. I don't know how long that was, but probably a half an hour. So I'm really grateful for all of you taking in that information. And a flipped classroom is what I see in the chat. A flipped classroom is what we'd like to do with our 7th and 8th years this year, and we're not really there yet. But it takes more of the approach where the student is using time in the classroom to learn and work through materials like the hands-on materials or the art projects that you all might be experiencing if you have a 7th or 8th grader right now, or the fill the tank. So with Chad project, and doing more and more of the practice work at home. So then you can bring your questions to your guide at school. And students in 7th and 8th grade just are not demonstrating that they're quite ready. And that's frankly a little bit okay, because the pandemic last year, distance learning was pretty rough. So I think we can all agree on that. That's a good point from someone in the chat. A couple monthly emails, a couple of times. Interesting feedback. I will take that into consideration, because sometimes they get lost and missed. And if your email inbox is like mine, we get lost a lot. So, somebody in the Q&A asks if the planner is provided by the school. And we used to do that, and it isn't so helpful for the student. So in 9th grade, the student should go to Target or Walmart or wherever, or like a lot of kids make their own bullet journals. What works for them the best, and pick their own and work on it through their own lens. It isn't really working to say one size fits all in 9th grade. It doesn't really work. So really hoping that the students come with something that works. And a lot of times students abandon it mid-year and try something else. So this is the year where they get the feedback on that from their guides, but also because they missed an assignment or two, or that biology test snuck up on them or something like that. So that's sort of the philosophy behind student self-selecting their planners. And it's not really part of my plan to send this current batch of 8th graders on the Odyssey, because the 9th grade trip to the farm school focuses on those 9th grade skills of learning that they need. So it really is focused on the 9th year and what they need, where the 7th and 8th grade Odyssey is, so much of it is beyond the 9th grader already. So that is currently where we're at with that. And if there's more questions, you can drop them into the chat or the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer them. And I think I talked for about 45, 50 minutes. So thank you for hanging in there. I will send out this recording for any of you that need that. And if you can't log into Schoology or PowerSchool, you can always just email office@Great River School, and that gets your email to the right person. So any sort of questions like that, sort of procedural, systematic questions, can always go to Office, and Holly gets those and can forward those to anybody who needs it. And so can I too. So any questions there can go to those two. So in recap, you can expect that your student increases academic expectations. They have graduation requirements that start day one of school, but you also have a heavy support team of advisors and guides and myself, an interventionist, to support your students with that. So yeah, cool. Another question in the Q&A says, when students choose their electives in April and May, do the parents get involved? And you certainly could. An email usually goes to your student that says, choose your electives. And you're just kind of queuing in. If you would like to talk about that with your student, cue your student in to talk about that when they get that email. And I can look into sending that email to parents as well, so that it's there. I'll see if Stacy can do that, and a reminder for you. Okay. Thank you all for taking the time to be here. I appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you tomorrow night. Maybe not. So I'll send out the recording for the bike trip tomorrow night too. So thank y'all.